Unit 13. Gateway. Clearly, schematic knowledge helps you, guiding your understanding and enabling you to reconstruct things you cannot remember. But schematic knowledge can also hurt you, promoting errors in perception and memory. Moreover, the types of errors produced by schemata are quite predictable. Bear in mind that schemata summarize the broad pattern of your experience, and so they tell you, in essence, what's typical or ordinary in a given situation. Any reliance on schematic knowledge, therefore, will be shaped by this information about what's normal. Thus, if there are things you don't notice while viewing a situation or event, your schemata will lead you to fill in these gaps with knowledge about what's normally in place in that setting. Likewise, if there are things you can't recall, your schemata will fill in the gaps with knowledge about what's typical in that situation. As a result, a reliance on schemata will inevitably make the world seem more normal than it really is, and will make the past seem more regular than it actually was. Exercise 1. Worker bees don't normally lay eggs. That's because the queen's pheromones suppress the reproductive system of the workers. However, if the queen dies and there are no larvae that can be trained to replace her, that can change. Unless a beekeeper intervenes with a new queen, the hive is doomed. In that case, a dying queenless colony will try to spread its genes before it goes to an end. Using an unexpected strategy, some of the workers will start laying eggs. However, since they haven't mated, their unfertilized eggs will yield only male bees. Maybe some of them will get lucky and find a willing queen, passing the hive's genes along in its dying days. Exercise 2. In the real estate industry, location is all important in determining the market value of properties. A good house in a slum district will not fetch a high price, no matter how good it is. But how is it that some locations come to be better than others? Usually it starts out with a natural advantage. One area may be conveniently placed near to major businesses, or it may be close to the sea or a river, or it may be slightly hilly, allowing good views. These natural advantages are enough that people will seek them out and pay slightly more for them than they would for other properties. When some properties attract elevated prices, they raise the prices of other properties nearby. In this way, the average prices in one area will drift to become higher than in neighboring areas. People naturally assume that the area with higher prices must be better to live in, so the process escalates. Exercise 3. Like all sectors in mature industries, the construction sector is characterized by a relatively few leading thinkers who innovate and monitor trends, and a larger group of technical experts who receive and disseminate innovation and new ideas. This dissemination group consists of architects, consultants, designers, and engineers. In the construction sector, this dissemination group is very small, relatively conservative, and divided up into groups. However, it gets a great deal of media publicity for innovation and forward thinking, particularly architects. Yet for most construction work, such high levels of technical sophistication are not necessary and are not supported because it is costly. Most buildings are built for functional purposes and not to advance or explore the limits of technology. A practical building with a facade that is interesting or artful is more than sufficient for most purposes. Exercise 4. Why teach history? Not, I propose, because it's there. Rather, we should teach history because it is a resource that can shed light on the lives we live today. We can learn from history because earlier times and thinkers were confronted with problems, ideas, and circumstances which have affinities to those that confront us today. We can learn from them both when past ages are committed to concepts and views similar to our own, and when they have views that are notable for their differences. Only a fool would ignore his past experience when confronted with a new situation. It would be equally foolish to ignore our collective history. This is why history should occupy a central place not only in the liberal arts curriculum, but in primary, secondary, and post-secondary education. Exercise 5. The goal of legal socialization is to instill in people a felt obligation or responsibility to follow laws and accept legal authority. The goal of moral socialization is to instill in people a duty to follow societal standards of proper behavior independent of rules and codes. Given that in normal everyday life, those behaviors that society considers immoral are frequently prohibited by law, the two usually work toward the same goal. However, that is not always the case. Criminalizing a behavior does not make it immoral, nor is all immoral behavior necessarily criminalized. Most people can think of an instance where they believe a behavior is immoral, but would not support criminalizing it or using the full force of the law to stop people from doing it. At the same time, even if people do abstractly support legal regulation of immoral behavior, they vary in how and the extent to which they want the legal system to intervene. Such views are strongly shaped by the way in which people understand the position and function of the law within society. Exercise 6. For many years, the British-French rivalry has extended from rugby matches, politics, and trading insults to trading mortality statistics. Since records in France started to be accurately collected, they have reported considerably fewer deaths from heart disease and a longer lifespan than the British. The French are proud of this, but many UK colleagues tell me that much of the difference is due to a reluctance to record deaths properly, with the same Anglo-Saxon rigor. Others disagree, asserting that misclassification could only explain at most 20% of the difference, and point to a consistent north-south difference across Europe. Even within France itself, there is a wide north-south difference, which suggests that most of the variation between UK and France is due to the healthier habits of the Southerners. Exercise 7. Once harvested, potatoes, even under ideal conditions, keep for only a few months before they sprout, and they are vulnerable to mold and decay. Native South Americans, however, developed a method of preserving them so that they could be stored for years to provide a safeguard against famine. The cold, dry climate of the Altiplano, the high Andean plateau, made this possible. After harvest, the potatoes were covered to prevent dew from settling on them and left out overnight in freezing temperatures. The following day, the potatoes were exposed to the sun, and farm families, men, women, and children alike, trod on the frozen potatoes to express their liquid, a process repeated several times during the following days. The resulting freeze-dried potato, called chuño, was stored in sealed, permanently frozen underground warehouses, where it would keep for years before deteriorating. Chuño was ground into flour and baked into bread, or rehydrated and used for thickening soups and stews, such as chupe, which was made with available meat and vegetables. Exercise 8. Have you ever played with the sand art toy where you pour colored sand into empty plastic frames or bottles, one layer at a time, to make pretty designs and patterns? Natural builders use a similar technique, but on a much larger scale when they build rammed earth walls. A single wall of this type is often used as an accent piece in a naturally built house. Rammed earth walls are often made of layers of red, orange, yellow, brown, and cream-colored earth. To make a wall like this, first a frame or formwork is built. Next, a damp mixture of sand, gravel, and clay is poured into the form. To make it more attractive, the different layers might be colored with natural pigments. Once the earth is in the form, it is packed down to compress it and make it stick together as a solid wall.